like looking at where I'm like, bread. Like, yeah. I'm like,
Oh,
BREAD. Okay. Like, oh,
all right, we're live.
ah.
It's happening.
It's happening.
All right, friends. All right, we're just getting our act together, and we're very excited to have you with us here today. This is DEI Cipher Decipher. We want to break the code with y'all. Talk about our cross-pollinated approach to our work together, supporting you getting to know our organization and ourselves as well. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Yoli Maya Ye. My pronouns are she, her. I am one of the co-founders of DEI Cipher, along with that lady. And I'm really excited to get a chance to share with you all today a little bit more of our approach and about our organization and just what makes us different. Yeah, and hopefully like why you should come hang out with us. I pass it over to you.
My name is Ruthann Gagnon. My pronouns are she, her as well. Co-founder of DEI Cipher. Super excited to be here and share with y'all what we're built, like not only dreaming into, but what we're building into. And always excited to have, I feel like half of this is like Yoli and I just enjoy being able to have these conversations, and I think, one of the things that we value so much as an organization for ourselves and as a group is the power of cross-pollination. And that I think has really been embodied from like inception with DEI Cipher Group, and the approach that we've taken, not only, with each other internally, and then also, how we want to then practice that kind of cross-pollination approach out with y'all. So great to be here. And man, Yoli, there's so many things to talk about.
There's so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
I just want to let any of the friends that are joining us live, just want to let you know, you can use the chat box feature on YouTube to talk with us. So that's why you might see me looking down a little bit, because I'm down here doing a little like double duty action. I actually have like 8 arms, but I just popped a second set out today so that I can like double manage a few things. All right. So check it out, friends. DEI Cipher. We want to support you, us, and the whole collective solving this equity puzzle. We, as a global collective, we're trying to do right by this call-in, right? We're trying to center the most vulnerable. We're trying to do analysis, right, of our organizations, how we're showing up in the world, the language you're using. We're trying to turn the mirror towards ourselves, right? And do that deep inner analysis and address, the internalized systems of oppression, internalized racism, internalized homophobia, internalized transphobia, genderism, ableism, ageism, all the things, right? And in this, let's call it a project, in this project right now, in this effort, in this work, the pendulum swings, right? And so let's say even politically, the pendulum swings. Definitely in the United States right now, because we know our audience isn't just solely in the United States. In the United States right now, it's election season. We're about to have some midterm elections. It's hot to trot on the political ideologies. And when Ruthann and I checked in on, hey, what do we want to vibe on? What do we want to have a cipher with you all on today? I said, let's name the resistance. And I know I like to follow news from very select sources. One of them is actually the Wall Street Journal. I have I get a lot of insight following financial news on the world and patterns and things that are happening. But I've noticed during this midterm election cycle, during this season, the Wall Street Journal has taken a very rightist turn in its opinion pieces and editorials. And about every other day, a couple times in the week, there are opinion pieces that are all about pushback on policy and institutional level change towards diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives in all sectors: education, healthcare, governance. In particular, these three, they're really just kind of continuing to cycle through. They're not sharing opinion pieces that are sharing any other viewpoint other than these statements that are, this change is harmful. Mainly for who? White people, right? Or those that have held the center space this long. So we've named 4 core industries that we work with DEI Cypher: yoga, wellness, hospitality, lifestyle. Those 4 industries are fairly inaccessible, even on the receiving end as a client or a customer. Pretty inaccessible for anyone other than those that are right in the center space, right? And just because I named industries that aren't exactly the industries that we work with, look, the trends is the same. The story that's being told is the same, that we don't want change. We don't want anything to be different. And I want to name this, unpack this a little bit, talk through it, and we want to talk with you about how our approach, we think, is a little bit future thinking. It's about, to us, a saying my mom uses all the time, progressing the peanut, right? Like how do, and then super side note, I read an article of a guy who set a Guinness World Record for the fastest ascent up this mountain, pushing a peanut with his nose. So I don't know, humor, sometimes you just got to interject it a little bit here and there, because I was like, that is progressing the peanut. Okay, that saying's real.
Dang. That's, yeah.
I know.
Yoli, one of the things, and I don't want to, if you had more to share there, I want to make that space, but one of the things that I think comes up as we have been talking about sort of this interesting sort of patterning, right? And editorial op-eds have a bit more of this like qualitative component, right? Like we aren't getting massive polls or data, these are qualitative, like op-eds can be, to me, are, in this qualitative data that we're seeing out in major publications like this, are such both kind of leading and lagging indicators all at the same time. That also, really reinforce and fuel our knowing that these new ways are so necessary. It also, like, I think, in some of our conversations, it's also really bolstered the observations we've made about how white-centered the DEI process and the experience that people have had in the past, and then how harmful and weaponizing that makes the entire process. We were just talking about, some questions that we want to start, asking folks out into the public, like, what do you think of when you hear DEI? Oh, we have to, And so, the problem and the solution are so kind of like just sort of keep kind of folding into one another, but it's super confusing. It's been confusing to people. There's this knowing of like, no, we know we want to do this. And yet the process and experience, the lived experience that certainly Black and brown folks have had, let alone white folks in these experiences, man, like it's just keeps kind of, really just rolling and undulating onto itself, as man, I just kind of want to give up then. Like, I'm not seeing the transformation. I'm seeing the opposite. Like, I'm seeing harm. I'm seeing hurt,
Yeah.
now I don't like it's gotten worse. How do I repair it? What do I do? And then we just kind of stagnate, right? I mean, that's a very typical human response when we know we kind of need to do something different, but we still don't quite, we're like, oh, what do we do here? So
Yeah. So like one of the examples we've heard in speaking with organization heads and business owners is they did the DEI audits, they did the trainings, they created policies, but in the end, the needles that they were trying to move didn't move at all. And then a stuckness, a new expression of paralysis arises. And in that, the folks in those organizations and companies that have marginalized identities, whatever those are, then they feel an even deeper sense of betrayal that, oh, it's your choice, people who hold the center space, who are largely white cishet, folks, that, oh, you get to decide when we're going to engage the DEI process and when we're not. So also keeping in mind that many of these DEI processes, these trainings, are traumatizing for the BIPOC folks in the room and the queer folks in the room and the migrant folks in the room. Right? And so what we recognize is that process-wise, restoration, sometimes you talk about restoration in terms of rest paradigm, but I'm bringing up today restoration in terms of, in order for us to take next steps, we are going to have to go back and heal some of the harm that's been done through DEI initiative processes, right? There's going to have to be trust building. We're going to have to build a whole new table for us all to sit at again, because folks have left the table and they have no interest in returning. And at the same time, what we want to call in, what we want at DI Cypher, what we want to drive is BIPOC leadership. Want to create safer spaces for BIPOC folks to lead, because we need new ideas. We need fresh voice. We need imaginations and voices that we're not hearing in the sound box of white supremacy. So
yeah,
how do we do this? Like, what are some of our methods and approaches in doing it?
Well, and Yoli, this might be, if you want, I think this might be an interesting space or place in this conversation to sort of walk through a little bit of some definition of terms, because you were just talking a little bit about the differential, like you were talking about rest versus restoration, and things like that. And I would love to hear you speak on that a little further, because this will kind of dovetail into some conversation about what's needed for creative solutions, what's needed for creative balm as part of this healing process. But I think there can be, and we talked about this a little bit last week too, of like, there's a certain concept around rest and restoration, especially in the equity environment, that this, like, well, wait, what do you mean we're all just supposed to kind of like go and take naps? Like, is this what we're doing? And that's okay. I don't say that to, like, put a diss on anybody who that's what they think, but there's even sometimes the mere terms that we're using have been framed so heavily into white centered terms and white
Yeah.
concepts. So that's another whole piece of like the things that we need, that we address, we address with the business leaders and folks that we already talked to, and something that, we're really helping to redefine and relens a lot of these terms. So,
Yeah. No, I can talk about this all
I know.
day.
Yeah.
Only because I myself had to go down a healing path to cultivate rest, even conceptually. I was so not restful. I was such a doer that I couldn't even conceptualize what rest meant, meaning active rest, right? So here's the thing, the inheritance, the concept that we've inherited of rest is you go to sleep equals unproductive. And if we want to talk about like top 10 concepts of North American and European white cultural characteristics, on the top 10 list is being productive, right? More awake hours. So you are more productive, right? And so, wow, that's totally disempowering rest as your body's natural daily healing practice. Right? Also, keep in mind, in sleep state is when your body goes and does its rapid detoxification process as well, a little wellness concept, thrown in there as well. So how are you supposed to cleanse? How are you supposed to process? How are you supposed to clear the short-term memory so that you can again be efficient in your waking hours for processing the experiences and the information that is coming your way? So, that means that we actually need another rest experience that I'm going to name it active rest, meaning you are involved in some sort of activity that the nervous system response is parasympathetic. It's rest repair, but I would also like to name play and socialization are also active rest practices. Now, when I'm talking about socialization, you done went to the headbanger, heavy metal concert and do blah, blah, blah. While that was playful for you and there was a socialization aspect, it's still sensory overload. So no, we're talking about the senses are not in overload. Okay, so sensory nervous system, not an overload. Right? A good ecstatic dance with drums. How about that as an example?
Yeah.
A little hippy dippy boho, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's an activity that elicits a rest response. And what should be the outcome of active rest is space. And what happens when we have space is the spontaneous creative process, creative design, creative innovation, creative problem solving can emerge. So you can't access creative problem solving without adequate active rest. So if my explanation still isn't getting for you, another way of seeing it is like inert rest, like I'm just laid out, I'm napping, I'm this, I'm that. And I love the people, Octavia Rahim, the nap bishop, that are calling in BIPOC folks to like drop them chains, go and nap, go and take rest, right? Yeah. And that's not for escapist purposes, for you to escape from your inner work of how you yourself are upholding systems of oppression in your individual, community, policy, and institutional level dimensions of life. Always got to like hammer it home, right?
Yeah.
So inert rest, guess what? You need that too. You need good quality of it as well, quality and quantity. And then is this even bigger thing, active rest. What does active rest generate? Space, spaciousness, right? So where we get caught up is in the like doing and doing nothing. So sometimes I call it non-doing.
And Yoli, I think like, we were talking a little bit about trust in general. This part of transformation, this relationship, between restoration and the creative arisings that are already present. Like we all have this power. We all have these like amazing solutions available to us. They're just not always terrifically accessible in this current paradigm. And, I can't tell you how often I have, whether this is in more like one-on-one work with folks, with organizations, with smaller groups, I'm always like, we actually already have everything we need right here to find solutions. There are some of us, and we can talk another day about how gifts present, how there are certainly, all of us may have different ways of how those gifts arise. But the reality is if you are a human, you have deep empowered ability to express and create. And that's something that I think, coming back to definition of terms, we get into this, this happens a lot as someone who has been connected very deeply to creative self most of my life. There can be this real idea of like, oh, that's for the creative department, or, oh, I'm not creative because I'm not an artist. There's a lot of ideas about this external expression, things like that. The reality is, coming back to how creativity informs and has this massive power to cipher, to help solve these puzzles. It is absolutely crucial for our way forward that restoration takes place. And creativity is not always about, there's sort of an also idea of like, oh, I had a new idea, or I had a new thing. Now that's some rugged individualism. Like we got some, like, and that I, because then, and I can say, Yoli was talking about her own experiences. I can say like, man, like I absolutely think back on experiences where I was really like coveting my creative wisdom, or coveting my idea because I didn't want anyone else to take it from me, because that felt like that was my currency. That was what I hung my hat on as my value, as my sole value, and I want to name that because that is a very common experience of why, you add in a 6-month-long, weaponizing DEI process at an organization. You then add in, the creatives who have felt like they've just been kind of capitalized on. You add in, marginalized groups that are like, why do I want to share my wisdom at this time, or share my thoughts? You're either going to take advantage of it or not listen to it, or whatever. There's a lot of stories here that, again, we have power to deconstruct. There is power to help really dissolve this, but it has to be
Ruth Ann,
right. Oh,
what you're getting at right now is what we want to call in and support people's transformation in decentralized leadership.
yes.
Because it's only in a hierarchical leadership model that, because
right.
You're not going to get your accolades, your rewards, or your just dues, your promotion, your monetary incentivizing. That's why you're not sharing those ideas, right?
Yeah.
Especially in creative settings, like there's like Hollywood scripts that go like this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of just that young BIPOC, female identifying person, and she's sharing her things and her ideas get stolen. Hell, that was Eddie Murphy Boomerang with Halle Berry. Damn.
Like,
I was actually thinking of the French show, Call My Agent before that.
oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love that show.
Yeah.
But
That's,
anywho, and
yeah.
also Emily in Paris. Okay. But anywho, but that's the point, that the because of a hierarchical leadership model, it actually squashes it, and hierarchical leadership model is reinforced by a system of reward and punishment. And we
Absolutely.
know or don't know, reward and punishment is rooted in the carceral prison model.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think about it as a parent, that like, wait a
That's
second.
real.
When that, because I took myself through a whole thing a couple of years back on like parenting for liberation. What does that mean to me? You know? And I said, well, if I'm giving into this reward and punishment model, I am literally setting up my child for a lifetime of a framework of reward and punishment. I was like, I'm not doing it. And at the same time, the reward center in the brain, we recruit from that a lot. Right. So it's interesting to understand our human psychology and how we need reward.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a system of reward and punishment. Because in this design of the social construct of difference, it will always be unfairly expressed based on the differences of who should get the reward and who historically has received the punishment. You know,
Well,
so what we have to call in the decentralized leadership model.
Yeah.
And not because we know how to do it. Just want to give that caveat.
Oh,
Not because we know how to do it, but because we're gonna fumble.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Cause man, it's like, you just made me think about, I have had so many conversations with people where they'll be like, oh, I won't steal your idea, or like, oh, I won't, I'll make sure to credit you, or, whatever that is. And I think there's always this like puzzled look where I was just like, oh, I don't, it's not that I certainly appreciate gratitude when when a contribution is recognized, I think like, but I also think that it speaks, like those comments speak more to what Yoli's also talking about, this, like a lot of this the deep external validation on, oh, I'm going to only share this if I know I'm going to get a cookie. And so I feel like I'm always like, oh, hey, I don't like, it's like, yes, thank you. And that's not the sole motivation, to share creative arisings for somebody like myself, or for many of the creatives out there. And I want to call in those folks too. There's, I've had so many amazing conversations with creative leaders lately who, when I've shared even what we're doing, and they're like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like, yeah, we are these, we already, like, so many of us have this architecture of how we birth out new ways. Like, this is so much of the job, like so much of the work, so man, like, oh, my mind's going a million places, but like my body's going a million places. Like, but yeah, it's like, I think also, and I know we're gonna start to kind of wind down today, but I want to kind of come back to some of like the key points of what we've been talking about, is that like, yeah, we're seeing a lot of resistance around some of these old paradigms for just that some of this DEI work really, is just ready for a different way. It's not that the old ways were like, oh my gosh, why did we do this, and regrets. It's nothing to that effect. It was just what was shaking out at that time, might have, there was a lot of focus around why, perhaps a lot of of like, oh, okay, man, let's get into some experiential how.
Let's get into some transformation. Yes. I often describe the phase that we've come out of, and we're naming it that was the phase that fit that time. And we're moving really fast through the phases, actually. And we needed to define the problem, right? Sometimes when we think of why, like, why are we here? Why is this the way it is? Sometimes I think of it as a what question. You know,
Mhm.
how are we defining this? However, without the experiential tools, we've gotten entrenched in defining the problem, pointing out the problem, ostracizing people for the problem, attacking our own out of frustration because the problem isn't moving, the peanut's not progressing, right? And um, nobody's really repping the way forward. I don't want to say nobody because I do hear, I think about some of the people we've named already. I think about other somatic practitioners. I'm thinking about Resma Minakim and somatic approach, of like, we're going to get in this body, we're going to get experiential, we're calling in rest, we're calling in unlocking the creative process, futurisms, imagining possibilities. We're talking about the wellness paradigm, which maybe in our next week's
Woo!
talk, we could like get into just like, what are we naming? Let's name it, because this is a really unhealthy version of this.
Oh my gosh.
But I had a moment this week. I was working with a client and we've been on a 3-year project. We revisited language from 1 year ago. We were so shocked. We're like, this language is outdated. We need to, whatever we were thinking about in terms of DEI within this organization 1 year ago, it's not where we're at now. And it gave me hope that even though it would appear that there's so much pushback from the political right, there's so much pushback from team white supremacy right now, and there's still the fury and rage for folks with marginalized identities. Again, insert wellness practices. Like, there's remedies, but we got to get them to the people, right?
Yep.
There's still hope. We are progressing.
Yes.
The peanut, it is actually progressing. And every once in a while, we need to zoom out and change the perspective. And that's why we want to call in for retreat. We want to call in for step out of your normal space, even get on a plane and go somewhere else. And then we look at ourselves, we rest, we celebrate, we play, we analyze. Because in that space making, we learn loads, we gain perspective and motivation with this. That's really hard when you're in it.
Yes.
Taking that perspective, So we are winding down. I'm just looking at our chat box here. So if there's space, right? Curious about decentralized leadership model and how that could work. I think, for example, lockdown, running a yoga studio, like in that time to make all the hard decisions. So nuances, right? When you have a small business and the leadership team is so small, one, maybe two people or a couple or a partner situation, it is very challenging to then well, that means I actually have to grow some sort of leadership team. Well, what do those people do? Well, how do they congregate? Am I paying these people? I'm a small business. I don't have money to pay them. I want you to know that I've been running a couple of these experiments with small businesses over the last few years, and we're making a way. We're creating a process for this, and we'll be excited to share that at the appropriate time as well. Probably in like one of our workshop spaces, so that we can really explain, what this approach to the cultivation of decentralized leadership can look like, but particularly for our industries, yoga, wellness, lifestyle, hospitality. And it's possible. And guess what? It takes time. And it moves at the speed of trust.
And Yoli, to your point too, and I too, I think both of us have had these really interesting experiences with groups over the last few years. And I think it's also, the forward failing like the failing forward is so, it's such a crucial part of the lessons learned, which is so hard. Like it's especially for small businesses, because you're like, it just feels differently when it's a small group, right? And also to Yoli's point, so many balms and so many ways to move to heal and address and repair and keep moving
Yes.
forward even stronger.
Yes. And that's the third part of rest and restoration. I'm so glad you named it, because that's the third part. The third part is, how do we repair harm? Restorative practices.
Yes.
Right? Literally conflict resolution and restorative practices. It's really these three pieces to that. We are going to be back with you guys next week for just a little bit more. We're really excited to talk and muse and just share with us our passions and also our personalities, that like we actually really want to have fun doing this work with you all. And giggle and laugh and go on silly tangents and then, come back. And I want to just name, something here that when infused in decolonization and restoration practices, creativity has the transformative power to center marginalized voices, unleash productivity, and combat these old ways that are bogging us down in this moment, whether it's in our personal lives or our businesses. So we need the rest piece to unlock the creativity, and through these processes, we can move the needle. We can progress the needle.
Really can.
So thank you, friends, that joined us live today. Be in touch with us. Decipher.com. We're deicipher.com. I'm going to pop that into the chat for us. Ruth Ann, any words from you as we wrap up?
No, I'm so good. Thank you so much for hanging with us today, or if you're catching the vid later. I really want to hear from folks. This has to be a collaborative process. We want, we love hearing from people and hearing about what's on your minds, what you need help with, what comes up for you. So please stay in touch, sign up for the newsletter, shoot us just a personal note on contact us if something comes up. Thank you so much. So grateful. So grateful to Yoli. So grateful to all the things coming together. It's amazing. Good.
All right, friends, we're going to catch you next week around the same time. Check out our website or IG for the exact timing, and we'll see you then. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.